I want to get into your process in a bit, but first I have to ask, and so I guess this is interesting to share my own entry into this form of leisure. I was vehemently against smoking of any kind. And I have had people who are close to me who um, started smoking weed, and it was a gateway drug. And I think I just connected a lot of, I became almost like it was like a purist, it's like no smoking of any kind. It's all, corrupt, and it's going to just corrupt you. And my cousin had gotten into, he had gotten a piece for Christmas of one that you kind of like whittle you make it yourself.
Yeah, a
And
kit.
it
Yeah.
comes with the stem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was talking to me about it, and I'm just like, yeah, I really don't approve of. And he was younger than me too, so he was like late teens or something. And I'm like, I really don't approve of this. I was telling you as a cousin, and then literally, I mean, I wasn't actively thinking about it. I did not agree with it. I'm being completely honest. I was very strong in that, and it just kept popping in my mind, and this fascination grew and this curiosity grew, but I was not actively thinking about it. And it was like a seed. I mean, ironically, and it was like growing and growing. And I'm like, all right, let me just kind of prove to myself why this is bad. This, like, it's the health risks.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know, just through the process of discovery, I was coming across why was I drawn to it. And this was when I was coming into my faith more fully too, and finding out. I've said this quote before, and it's the famous quote. In Catholicism, the pipe, and the cross all intersect, and it's like I was
Chesterton.
feeling that. Yes,
Yep.
and I started reading articles about, is there a connection to pipe smoking with the faith? And yep,
Chesterton.
there he is.
I've actually got a pile of Chesterton pipes sitting right here, and you're quoting him. That's beautiful, man.
The
Yeah.
man, the man. So, yeah, long story short, I found one article in particular that it said there was very few studies, and I think, again, we'll touch on this in a bit. Very few, almost, actually, I don't think there's been one study done on those who've exclusively smoked pipes and the health risks that may or may not be associated. And so basically, I bought one, and I was like I'm doing it, and I never looked back. And now I have, a dozen, which is still a small collection, but for me, a dozen is a lot. And um, it's just been so incredibly enjoyable. And so that's my testimony. But I would love to know how you got into it.
Yeah. Well, let me just give you my hot take on that whole anti-tobacco culture that we've found ourselves in. I know how old you are, so you grew up when the United States government was subsidizing anti-tobacco media. Um, and I grew up in the '90s, well, late '80s, early '90s, and everything was anti-tobacco, not anti-cigarette, which would have absolute legitimate claims, but anti-tobacco. And we were all made to believe that nicotine was going to kill everything that it touched. And what's really interesting, diving into actual data instead of propaganda, really started to open doors for me. I overanalyze everything, but like you said, studies that are pipe specific, there's actually a reason that those are so few and far between, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But starting all the way back in 1962, when the Surgeon General first came out with a warning that cigarettes are deadly, and we're going to start, broadcasting this across the country, they actually had data that they were able to collect, and the initial statements that were brought to public light were, if you smoke cigarettes, your lifespan will be shorter than that of a non-smoker. And we still know that to be true. That is a fact. There is a plethora of issues that go from top to bottom. I mean, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head, that cigarettes can cause issues with, like all of your organs, stuff with your skin, just everything, everything. Okay, not to mention the carcinogens from the chemicals that are put in some of the cigarettes, right? Most of the cigarettes. Well, back to 1962. So then the data comes out. Oh, well, cigar smokers also have shorter lifespans than non-smokers, but not as bad as cigarettes. Then the data came out that, oh, well, pipe smokers aren't suffering as bad as cigar smokers. But what they really didn't want to come to light, that did later on, was that the data from that time showed unequivocally that pipe smokers pipe smokers were living longer than non-smokers. And what's fascinating about that is, at the time, it was supposed that that was because pipes tended to be um, a recreation of the upper class, and higher society individuals had better nutrition and better access um, to medicine, and that perhaps that was why the people that smoked pipes were still averaging longer lifespans. But you fast forward, how many years has it been? 80 years. The data is the same, and let me tell you, the healthcare, the food, it's all different than it was 80 years ago. But that is still the data that we're gathering. Now, unfortunately, it is really hard to pinpoint everything with a pipe because it's so varied, and that's what makes studies so difficult. You can do a study that says, these people smoke 4 cigars a day, and you can measure 4 cigars a day. You can measure how many grams of tobacco, and you can, you know, put all this into data trends and have actual data and statistics around it. But a pipe is tricky because individuals will smoke a pipe differently, or they will have different size bowls, or someone will have a large bowl and smoke it for 2.5 hours, and another person will have 18 micro bowls, and maybe they have the same amount of tobacco, or maybe they don't. So it's really hard to pinpoint and measure out for pipe smoking. But we do know that the rate of absorption of nicotine and other chemicals in your mouth is micro compared to absorption in your lungs. And if you're smoking a pipe correctly, you're not inhaling it. So that's massive. If we just go apples to apples and you compare the amount of tobacco in an average size tobacco bowl, it's between 1 and 2 cigarettes, the amount of actual tobacco in it. So if I smoke an entire bowl of tobacco, but end up with 1 to 2% of the absorption in my body that a cigarette had, how many bowls do I have to smoke to equal 1 pack of cigarettes? Well, I'll tell you that if I don't sleep and smoke 24/7, I'll never make it in 24 hours.
Wow.
So just the apples to apples, just with the amount of tobacco that you're smoking, it's impossible to compare the two and say that they're equal. But then there also aren't dangerous additives in pipe tobacco. So most of us, growing up when we did, have been more or less duped all of our lives thinking tobacco was evil, tobacco is evil, tobacco is evil, never having been told the benefits, the the way that smoking a pipe slows you down, or the positive effects of nicotine, which is interestingly extremely similar to caffeine. Super addictive, not dangerous.
Right.
Super addictive. But how about the contemplative nature of smoking a pipe? How about my stress levels have legitimately decreased, and these are things you can measure. Um, that's why pipe smokers are living longer, is decreased stress, prayerful lifestyles, slowing down, smelling the roses, smelling the tobacco, and using it as a tool to enjoy life.
I want to thank you for your time, for listening and or watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, everything that I always say. And I also ask that you, if it was fruitful, share it with others who might enjoy this kind of a conversation. And finally, if you feel so called, that you support, that could be with a prayer or monetarily, it would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, thanks again. God bless.